The first thing Chioma felt was the silk. Expensive, cool silk sheets that definitely didn't belong to her threadbare IKEA bedding. The second thing she felt was the pounding in her head, a reminder that mixing soju, wine, and her friend's questionable special shots was a terrible life decision. The third thing she felt was the presence of another person in the room. Her eyes snapped open. A man was lying next to her in the bed. Not just any man. Kang Min-Jun. Her boss. The CEO of Kang Industries. The man whose coffee she prepared every morning at exactly 7:42 a.m. No earlier, no later. The man who had fired 3 people last month for breathing too loudly during a presentation. The man whose face could launch 1,000 Korean dramas but whose personality could sink them all. And he was in bed. With her. The scream that tore from Chioma's throat could have woken the ancestors back in Lagos. She scrambled backward so fast she fell off the bed entirely, taking half the silk sheets with her, landing on the floor with a thud that rattled her already abused brain. She wrapped the sheets around herself like a cocoon of panic, her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape her body. Min-Jun stirred, opening one eye with the casual indifference of someone who woke up next to screaming women regularly. Which, knowing his reputation, he probably did. He propped himself up on one elbow, still fully dressed in his black turtleneck and dress pants, looking like he'd just stepped out of a photo shoot for Gorgeous Sociopaths Weekly. "You're awake," he said, his voice that low rumble that made board members sweat during meetings. Chioma's mind raced through every possible explanation. Had she been drugged? Kidnapped? Had she somehow sleepwalked into her boss's apartment? Was this a very elaborate nightmare brought on by the gimbap she'd eaten from that questionable street vendor? What, where, how, why? Was all she could manage, her Nigerian accent thickening with stress, the words tumbling out in a pitch that could shatter glass. Min-Jun sat up fully now, his expression unreadable as always. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows carved shadows across his sharp features, and Chioma hated her traitorous brain for noticing how unfairly attractive he looked at. She glanced at the designer clock on the wall, 7 in the morning. Who looked like that at 7 a.m.? Vampires. Serial killers. K-pop idols. Apparently, her boss. "You called me," he stated simply, as if that explained everything. "I what?" Chioma clutched the sheets tighter, mentally inventorying her body for any signs of activities. She was still in her club dress, though she noticed it was unzipped at the back. Her shoes were neatly placed by the bedroom door. Her jewelry was on the nightstand. Everything seemed accounted for except her dignity and her memory of the last 12 hours. "Last night. You sent me a voice note," Min-Jun continued, reaching for his phone on the nightstand. "Would you like me to play it back?" No, that's fine. I believe you." Chioma's face burned hotter than her grandmother's pepper soup. Fragments of memory were starting to pierce through the fog. The club. The drinks. Her phone. Oh God. The voice note. 12 hours earlier. Friday night in Itaewon had seemed like such a good idea. After a particularly brutal week of working for Min-Jun, who had made her redo a presentation 4 times because the shade of blue in the charts was aesthetically offensive, Chioma's co-workers had dragged her out to Club Heaven. She'd initially protested. She had laundry to do, Korean dramas to watch, a perfectly good couch calling her name. But her friend Yuki had physically confiscated her apartment keys and declared it an intervention. "You're 28, not 88, Yuki had shouted over the music, shoving another shot into Chioma's hand. "When was the last time you did something fun? Something spontaneous? Something that didn't involve color-coding your boss's schedule?" Chioma had to admit, the music felt good. Afrobeats remixed with K-pop, the bass thrumming through her body, making her forget about quarterly reports and Min-Jun's impossibly high standards. She danced, laughed, and, critically, drunk far more than her usual 1 glass of wine limit. By 10 p.m., she was what her mother would call speaking to the spirits, gesticulating wildly while explaining to a very confused bartender why Nigerian jollof rice was superior to all other jollof rice. By 10:30, she'd made best friends with 3 strangers and was teaching them Igbo phrases. By 11, she knew she needed to leave before she did something truly regrettable. She'd pulled out her phone, squinting at the bright screen, trying to find her best friend Ada's contact. Ada, her ride-or-die since university, who lived 20 minutes away and had promised to be on call for exactly this scenario. Chioma pulled up the voice note function and pressed record. Ada, my beautiful, wonderful best friend, she'd slurred into the phone, her words tumbling over each other like dominoes. Please come get me from Club Heaven. I'm so drunk I might start proposing marriage to strangers. Come save me before I do something stupid like call my boss and tell him his face is too handsome for his terrible personality and that his voice sounds like expensive chocolate and danger had a baby. She'd giggled at her own joke, hit send, and felt very proud of her eloquent communication skills. Then she'd looked at the screen. Voice note sent to Kang Min-Jun. The alcohol in her system instantly evaporated, replaced by pure, ice-cold terror. She'd pressed delete. Too late. The red receipt appeared, 2 blue check marks that felt like a death sentence. No, 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 she'd whispered, frantically trying to recall the message, delete it from existence, hack into the space-time continuum and prevent herself from ever buying that phone. Her co-workers had gathered around, asking what was wrong, but Chioma couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. She'd just sent a drunk voice note, calling her famously cold, notoriously private boss handsome, to the man himself. The man who once made a CFO cry for using the wrong font in an email. The man whose entire personality seemed to be carved from ice and intimidation. Her phone had rung. Caller ID. Kang Min-Jun. In her panic and inebriation, she'd answered. Good evening, Mr. Kang, sir. She'd practically shouted into the phone, trying to sound sober and professional and failing spectacularly at both. I'm having a very professional Friday evening reviewing quarterly reports in my mind. Location. Now. His voice had cut through her rambling like a knife through butter. Sir, I'm so sorry, that message was meant for. You're drunk. You're alone. Send me the address of the club. Immediately. I'm not alone, sir, I'm with friends. I heard the voice note. 3 times. You said my face is too handsome and my voice sounds like expensive chocolate and danger had a baby. You're clearly severely impaired. Send me your location or I'm tracking your phone. The line had gone dead, leaving Chioma staring at her phone in disbelief. Had her boss just threatened to track her phone? And had he really listened to her embarrassing voice note 3 times? Her friends had tried to make her feel better, but Chioma knew this was it. Monday morning, she'd be fired. Possibly deported. Definitely humiliated. She'd stumbled outside for air, her head spinning from alcohol and mortification. The cool night air of Seoul had felt good against her flushed skin. She'd been leaning against the wall, trying to figure out if she could feasibly move to a different country and assume a new identity, when 3 men had approached. They'd started friendly enough, asking if she needed help, if she wanted to join them for drinks. But when Chioma politely declined, their friendly demeanor had shifted. One had grabbed her wrist. Another had blocked her path back to the club entrance. Let go, she'd said firmly, her fear sharpening her senses despite the alcohol. I said no. Don't be like that, one of them had said in broken English, tightening his grip. Just 1 drink. Then everything had happened very, very fast. A hand had appeared from nowhere, gripping the wrist of the man holding Chioma with such force that his face had contorted in pain. She turned to see Min-Jun standing there in all black, black coat, black turtleneck, black gloves, looking like he'd stepped out of a different world entirely. A dangerous world. His face had been perfectly calm, but his eyes had held something terrifying. He'd spoken in rapid Korean, his voice low and deadly, and whatever he'd said had made the men's faces go pale. But they hadn't been smart enough to leave. One had tried to throw a punch. What happened next had looked like choreography from an action film. Min-Jun had moved with a precision and grace that seemed impossible, each movement deliberate and devastating. 3 men, 3 seconds, all on the ground. He hadn't even broken a sweat. His breathing had remained steady, his expensive clothes unmarred. Chioma had stood frozen, her back against the wall, watching her CEO, the man who spent his days reviewing spreadsheets and attending board meetings, systematically dismantle 3 attackers like he'd been trained for it his entire life. When it was over, Min-Jun had turned to her, removing his gloves with careful deliberation. "Can you walk?" he'd asked, as casually as if he'd just asked her about the weather. She'd nodded mutely, too shocked for words. He'd draped his coat over her shoulders. It had smelled like expensive cologne and something darker, something she couldn't identify, and guided her to a black luxury car idling at the curb. She'd been too stunned to protest, too confused to ask questions. The car ride had been silent at first. Chioma had sat in leather seats that cost more than her yearly rent, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Min-Jun had sat beside her, checking his phone, his profile sharp and unreadable in the passing streetlights. "Mr. Kang," she'd finally managed, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "Thank you. You didn't have to." "You're my executive assistant," he'd interrupted, not looking up from his phone. "Your safety reflects on the company." The words had stung more than they should have. Of course. Business. Everything with Min-Jun was business. But then he'd added, quieter, "And you're drunk in a foreign country. Someone needed to ensure you didn't get hurt." Something in his tone had made her brave. Or maybe it was still the alcohol. "How did you get there so fast?" she'd asked. "I was nearby." "You're lying." The words had come out before she could stop them. "You have that little muscle twitch in your jaw when you lie. I've noticed." His eyes had cut to her then, sharp and intense, and the air in the car had shifted into something thick and charged. "You notice things about me." Chioma had realized her mistake too late. "Professional things," she'd backtracked quickly. "Like when you're about to fire someone, or when the coffee isn't right, or..." "What else do you notice?" He'd turned to face her fully, and she'd suddenly been very aware of how small the back of the car was, how close they were sitting. This was dangerous territory. This was her boss. Her terrifying, gorgeous, apparently secretly a fighter boss. "I notice you work too hard," she'd said finally, honestly. "I notice you never eat lunch. I notice you look tired on Thursdays. I notice..." She'd stopped herself. "What?" His voice had been soft, almost gentle. She'd never heard him sound like that. "I notice you're not as cold as you pretend to be." The silence that had followed was deafening. Min-Jun had stared at her, his expression unreadable, and Chioma had been certain she'd just sealed her termination. Then the car had pulled up to a building. Not her apartment. His penthouse. "Sir, this isn't..." "You're not going home like this," he'd said firmly. "You can barely stand. You'll sleep in the guest room. I'll have my driver take you home in the morning." She'd been too tired to argue, too emotionally overwhelmed. She'd let him guide her inside, up the private elevator, into a space so luxurious it felt like a museum. He'd pointed her to the guest room, handed her a bottle of water and aspirin, and left her alone. Or so she'd thought. Back in the present, Chioma sat on the floor of Min-Jun's bedroom, wrapped in his silk sheets, mortification complete. "Why am I in your room and not the guest room?" she asked weakly. Min-Jun had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "You sleepwalked. I woke up and you were climbing into my bed, crying about something called jollof rice politics. I didn't want to wake you. So you just slept next to me. On top of the covers. Fully clothed. I was being a gentleman. Gentlemen don't watch women sleep. I wasn't watching. I was working." He gestured to the laptop on the nightstand. "Until about an hour ago when you punched me in your sleep and called me Ada's evil twin." Despite everything, the embarrassment, the confusion, the mortifying voice note, Chioma felt a laugh bubble up. This was insane. Her entire life was insane. And as Min-Jun's mouth quirked into the smallest smile she'd ever seen him make, she realized Monday morning was going to be very, very interesting. The laugh died in Chioma's throat when she caught Min-Jun actually smiling, a real smile, not the corporate grimace he gave investors or the cold smirk he used to intimidate competitors. This was different. Softer. Almost human. And it made him approximately 10 times more dangerous to her sanity. "This isn't funny," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "This is a nightmare. A professional catastrophe. My mother is going to kill me when she finds out I spent the night at a man's house." Your mother won't find out, Min-Jun said, standing up from the bed with fluid grace. He walked to the window, giving her space, his silhouette dark against the Seoul skyline. Unless you plan to tell her. Chioma clutched the sheets tighter. Mr. Kang, I am so sorry. The voice note, showing up here, she gestured helplessly at the bed, the sleepwalking into your bed situation. I'll have my resignation letter on your desk Monday morning. He turned sharply. You're quitting. I sent my boss a drunk voice note calling him handsome. I sleepwalked into his bed. I talked about jollof rice in my sleep. There's no coming back from this level of unprofessional behavior. I didn't ask for your resignation. You don't have to ask. I'm offering it out of respect for both our dignities. Min-Jun crossed his arms, his expression hardening back into the CEO mask she knew so well. Miss Okonkwo, in the 8 months you've worked for me, you've increased my productivity by 37%. You've caught 4 major errors that would have cost the company millions. You learned Korean business etiquette in 3 weeks, memorized my schedule down to the minute, and you're the only assistant I've had who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm being unreasonable. Chioma blinked. She'd never heard him give a compliment. Ever. To anyone. You think I care about a drunk voice note? He continued, his voice taking on that low, dangerous quality that made her stomach flip. You think I'm offended that you called me handsome? The air in the room changed again, charging with that same electricity from the car ride. Chioma's heart hammered against her ribs. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Miss Okonkwo? He took a step closer. That you finally said what you've been thinking for months. That you're attracted to your boss. Heat flooded Chioma's face. I never said. You didn't have to. Another step. I notice things too. I notice how you look away when I roll up my sleeves. I notice how your breathing changes when I lean over your desk. I notice how you bite your lip when you're trying not to say something unprofessional. Oh God. Oh God. This was not happening. Her boss, her cold, unreachable boss, was calling her out on her attraction to him. In his bedroom. While she was wrapped in his sheets like some kind of Nigerian burrito. Mr. Kang. Min-Jun. What? When we're not in the office, you can call me Min-Jun. His eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. Since we're apparently past formalities, given that you slept in my bed. Chioma's mind was spinning. This felt like a fever dream. This is inappropriate. You're my boss. There are rules. HR policies. Power dynamics. You're right. He stepped back, and she hated how her body mourned the distance. Which is why nothing happened last night, nothing will happen now, and Monday morning, we'll return to our professional relationship as if this never occurred. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt disappointed, which was insane. This was what she wanted. Professional boundaries. Her job intact. No messy complications. So why did her chest ache? However, Min-Jun continued, turning back to the window, his voice carefully neutral. You should know that the men who harassed you last night weren't random clubgoers. The abrupt topic change gave Chioma whiplash. What? They were sent by the Lee family. Competitors who've been trying to find leverage against me for months. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather, not a targeted attack. Chioma's blood ran cold. They were targeting me? Because I work for you. Yes. Which is why I was nearby when you called. I had security following you. The pieces clicked into place. You've been having me followed. Protected, he corrected. There's a difference. The Lee family plays dirty. Anyone connected to me becomes a potential target. I couldn't risk, he stopped himself, jaw tightening. Couldn't risk what? Couldn't risk my assistant being used as leverage. But something in his voice suggested that wasn't the complete truth. Chioma's head was spinning for entirely new reasons now. How long has this been happening? The protection. 3 months. 3 months. You've had people watching me for 3 months and didn't think to mention it. Min-Jun turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Would you have accepted it if I'd asked permission? That's not the point. You can't just, she struggled to her feet, still wrapped in sheets, nearly tripping. You can't just decide to have people follow me around Seoul without my knowledge. That's controlling and creepy and necessary. His voice was hard now, the CEO back in full force. The Lee family doesn't make idle threats. Last year, they kidnapped the daughter of a business rival. The year before, they burned down a competitor's factory with workers still inside. I will not apologize for keeping you safe. The conviction in his voice stopped her protest. This wasn't just business to him. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the way his hands clenched at his sides. Why do you care so much? She asked softly. I'm just your assistant. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. You're not just anything, Chioma. It was the first time he'd used her first name. The sound of it in his deep voice, with his slight Korean accent wrapping around the syllables, made her knees weak. Mr. Kang. I should let you get dressed. He moved toward the door with determined purpose, like he was fleeing. There are fresh clothes in the closet. Everything's new, tags still on. My housekeeper keeps emergency supplies for guests. The implication hung in the air. Other women had stayed here. Of course they had. Men who looked like Min-Jun and had his wealth didn't sleep alone. The jealousy that spiked through Chioma was completely irrational and entirely unwelcome. Breakfast will be ready in 30 minutes, Min-Jun continued, his hand on the door handle. And Chioma? Yes. Stop trying to resign. You're the best assistant I've ever had. I'm not letting you go. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. For professional reasons, of course. Then he was gone, leaving Chioma alone in his bedroom, wrapped in his sheets, her heart hammering and her mind racing with far too many thoughts about her impossible boss. 30 minutes later, Chioma had found, much to her surprise, that Min-Jun's emergency supplies included clothes in exactly her size. Which was either very convenient or very suspicious. She'd chosen simple black leggings and an oversized cream sweater, both still bearing luxury brand tags that made her wince at the prices. She'd found the bathroom, which was larger than her entire studio apartment, and tried to make herself presentable. Her braids were messy from sleep, her makeup from last night smudged. She'd washed her face, finger-combed her hair, and stared at her reflection. You're having breakfast with your boss, she told herself firmly. Your boss who saved you from attackers. Your boss who apparently has you followed for your safety. Your boss who slept next to you and called you by your first name and said you're not just anything. Her reflection looked skeptical. This is fine. Everything is fine. Professional. Boundaries. Her reflection definitely wasn't buying it. She found Min-Jun in the kitchen. Because of course he had a kitchen that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine, all marble and steel and windows. He was cooking, which seemed wrong somehow. CEOs didn't cook. CEOs had people who cooked for them. But there he was, standing at the stove in dark jeans and a simple white t-shirt that showed off his shoulders in a way that his suits never did, flipping what looked like Korean pancakes. You cook, Chioma said, announcing her presence. He glanced over his shoulder. You sound surprised. I am surprised. I assumed you sustained yourself on the tears of your enemies and black coffee. The corner of his mouth twitched. Was that almost a smile? The tears of my enemies are just a snack. I need actual food for sustained energy. Had Min-Jun just made a joke? Chioma felt like she'd entered an alternate dimension. Sit, he instructed, gesturing to the breakfast bar. Kimchi pancakes, eggs, rice. I wasn't sure what you'd want. You made all this in 30 minutes. I'm efficient. He plated the food with surprising care, setting it in front of her. And I needed something to do with my hands. Chioma caught the implication. He'd been nervous. Kang Min-Jun, the ice king of Korean business, had been nervous about having breakfast with her. The food was delicious, which was annoying. She didn't want her boss to be good at cooking on top of everything else. It felt unfair. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the morning sun streaming through the windows, Seoul stretching out below them like a promise. About last night, Chioma started. Which part? Min-Jun asked, his voice carefully neutral. The voice note, the attack, or the sleepwalking? All of it, but specifically. She took a breath. You said I'm being followed because the Lee family might target me. What else aren't you telling me? Min-Jun set down his chopsticks, his expression becoming serious. How much do you know about my family's business? Official version or office gossip version? The truth. Chioma considered. I know Kang Industries is one of the largest tech conglomerates in Korea. I know your father built it from nothing, and you took over 5 years ago when he retired. I know you're brilliant at what you do, ruthless in negotiations, and that most of your competitors are terrified of you. And there are rumors that your family has connections to less legitimate businesses. That your father didn't exactly build his empire through legal means alone. That you, she stopped, suddenly uncertain. That I'm connected to the Korean Mafia, Min-Jun finished for her, his voice flat. You can say it. The words hung between them. Chioma's heart raced, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. Are you? My father was. Is. The legitimate business was always a front for other operations. Gambling, protection, strategic acquisitions. When I took over, I wanted to separate the two. Keep the legal business clean, distance myself from the rest. And my father's old associates didn't appreciate that. Neither did competitors who were used to playing by different rules. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. The Lee family in particular has been pushing back. They want to destabilize Kang Industries, force me to come back to the old ways. And they'll use any weakness they can find. Which is why you have people following me, Chioma said slowly. Because I'm a weakness. Because you're important to the company, he corrected. But his eyes said something different. Mr. Kang. Min-Jun. We're well past formality now, don't you think? Min-Jun, she tried, the name feeling strange and intimate on her tongue. I'm your assistant. I organize your calendar and make your coffee. I'm not important enough to be a target. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You really don't know, do you? Know what? He stood abruptly, moving to the window, his back to her. You don't know that you're the first person in 5 years who's made me laugh. You don't know that I look forward to Monday mornings because it means you'll be there with your ridiculous optimism and your terrible dad jokes. You don't know that I hired 2 other assistants before you and fired them both within a week because they weren't you. Chioma's breath caught in her throat. You don't know, he continued, his voice rough, that I listened to your voice note 3 times not because I was angry, but because I liked hearing you say my face is handsome, even if you were drunk. You don't know that I've wanted to kiss you since the 3rd week you worked for me, when you told me my color coding system was emotionally constipated and suggested improvements. He turned to face her, and the raw honesty in his expression made her chest ache. You don't know that having you followed isn't just about business. It's because the thought of something happening to you makes me want to burn Seoul to the ground to keep you safe. The silence that followed was deafening. Chioma couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she was hearing. Sir! Don't! He held up a hand. Don't say anything. I shouldn't have told you any of that. It's inappropriate. I'm your boss. There are power dynamics, like you said. I'm connected to dangerous people. You deserve better than. Chioma stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You're an idiot. Min-Jun blinked. Excuse me. You're an idiot, she repeated, walking toward him. A brilliant, terrifying, gorgeous idiot. You think I don't know about the power dynamics. You think I haven't spent 8 months trying not to fall for my emotionally constipated boss who looks like he walked out of a magazine spread for men who could ruin your life. Chioma. You think I haven't noticed how you bring me tea when I'm stressed? How you've never once raised your voice at me, even though you yell at everyone else? How you memorized that I'm allergic to shellfish after I mentioned it once in passing? She was close to him now, close enough to see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, close enough to smell his cologne, cedar and something spicy that made her head spin. You think I didn't know you were having me followed? Min-Jun, I lived in Lagos. I know what security looks like. I've known for weeks. His eyes widened. You knew. Of course I knew. And I didn't stop it because... She took a shaky breath. Because it meant you cared. Even if it was just about protecting your assistant, it meant I mattered to you somehow. You matter, he said roughly, his hands coming up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. God, Chioma, you matter so much it scares me. Then stop talking, she whispered, and kiss me already. For a man who was usually so controlled, Min-Jun moved with surprising urgency. His mouth found hers, and Chioma's entire world tilted sideways. His lips were soft but demanding, his kiss thorough and devastating. One hand stayed gentle against her cheek while the other slid to the small of her back, pulling her closer. Chioma's hands found his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palms, solid proof that he was just as affected as she was. She'd imagined this. In weak moments late at night, she'd let herself imagine what kissing Min-Jun might be like. The reality was so much better and so much worse because now she knew what she'd been missing, what she couldn't have. Min-Jun pulled back first, resting his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. This is a terrible idea, he murmured. The worst, she agreed. You work for me. It's completely inappropriate. Completely. We should maintain professional boundaries. Absolutely. Neither of them moved away. Chioma, he said softly, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. If we do this, if we try this, everything changes. The Lee family will see you as an even bigger target. My father's associates will try to use you against me. Your life will become complicated and potentially dangerous. My life was already complicated the moment I sent you that voice note, she pointed out. I'm serious. These people don't play fair. They'll dig into your past, threaten your family, use every pressure point they can find. Chioma pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. Min-Jun, I grew up in Lagos during the worst years of crime. My father was a police officer who refused to take bribes. I know about danger. I know about threats. And I'm still here, aren't I? This is different. Is it? Or are you looking for excuses because you're scared? His jaw tightened. I'm not scared. Liar. Your jaw just twitched. Despite everything, he almost smiled. You're impossible. You like that about me? I do. He sighed, stepping back, and Chioma immediately missed his warmth. But that doesn't change the facts. If we do this, we do it carefully. Discreetly. No one at the office can know, at least not yet. It would undermine your position, make people think you slept your way to your job. The practical concerns were sobering. Chioma's mind, which had been pleasantly fuzzy with endorphins, sharpened back to reality. You're right, she said quietly. Office relationships are messy even without the added complication of you being my boss and potentially connected to organized crime. Not potentially. Definitely connected, even if I'm trying to separate from it. That's not exactly reassuring. I know. He ran a hand through his hair again, frustrated. Which is why maybe we should. Don't. Chioma held up a hand. Don't say we should forget this happened. Don't say it was a mistake. Because I've spent 8 months trying to convince myself that what I feel for you is just admiration or attraction to authority or whatever psychological justification would make it easier to ignore. And I'm tired of lying to myself. Min-Jun stared at her, his expression unreadable. But, she continued, you're right that we need to be smart about this. So here's what I propose. We take this slow. We figure out what this is between us away from the office. No one needs to know yet. And if it doesn't work out, if the complications become too much, we can walk away with our professional relationship intact. And if it does work out, then we'll deal with that problem when we get there. He considered her for a long moment, and she could practically see him weighing options, calculating risks, running through scenarios the way he did with business deals. Finally, he nodded. Okay. Okay. We'll try. Carefully. Slowly. He stepped closer again, his hand finding hers, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. But I need you to promise me something. What? If things get dangerous, if the Lee family or my father's people start targeting you, you tell me immediately. And you let me protect you. Min-Jun. Promise me, Chioma. I can't do this if I'm constantly worried that you're in danger and not telling me. The intensity in his voice, the genuine fear in his eyes, made her chest tight. I promise. But only if you promise to actually tell me when there are threats instead of just having me secretly followed. Deal. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that was somehow more intimate than their earlier kiss. Now, you should probably go home before my housekeeper arrives and gets the wrong idea. What's the wrong idea? That I had a woman spend the night. She'll tell my mother. My mother will plan a wedding. Chioma laughed. And here I thought Korean mafia bosses didn't have to worry about their mothers. You've clearly never met a Korean mother. They're scarier than any mafia family. Monday morning. Kang Industries. Walking into the office on Monday felt surreal. Everything looked the same, the sleek modern design, the bustling employees, the massive logo on the wall. But everything had changed. Chioma sat at her desk outside Min-Jun's office, the same desk she'd occupied for 8 months, and tried to act normal. Professional. Like she hadn't spent Saturday afternoon texting her boss. Like she hadn't met him for a secret dinner Sunday evening at a restaurant in a neighborhood where no one from the office would see them. Like she hadn't kissed him goodnight in his car, his hands in her hair, her heart racing. Both of them agreeing this was crazy but neither wanting to stop. Good morning, Miss Okonkwo, Min-Jun said formally as he arrived, exactly at 7:42 a.m. as always. Good morning, Mr. Kang, she replied, equally formal, handing him his coffee. Your 8 a.m. meeting has been moved to 8:30. The reports you requested are on your desk. Anyone watching would see nothing unusual. But when Min-Jun took the coffee cup, his fingers brushed hers deliberately, and his eyes held hers for just a moment too long. Excellent work, as always, he said, his voice neutral but his eyes warm. Then he was in his office, the door closing behind him, and Chioma had to resist the urge to squeal like a teenager. She was a professional. A grown woman. Not someone who giggled about her boss touching her hand. Her phone buzzed. A text from Min-Jun. You look beautiful in that dress. She glanced down at her navy blue dress, nothing special, professional and modest. She typed back, you're not supposed to notice what I wear. I always notice. Stop biting your lip or I'm going to come back out there and kiss you in front of the entire office. Chioma immediately stopped biting her lip, her face flushing. She typed, professional boundaries, remember? I'm being professional. I haven't mentioned how I can't stop thinking about Saturday night. Min-Jun. Fine. Back to work. But we're having dinner tonight. My place. I'll cook. That's not slow and careful. It's dinner. Very innocent. Very professional. A boss appreciating his assistant's hard work. By cooking for her at his penthouse. Is that a no? Chioma hesitated, then smiled as she typed. What time? She could almost hear his satisfaction through the phone. 7 p.m. I'll send a car. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and paperwork. Chioma tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting to Min-Jun, to the way he'd looked at her in his kitchen, to the feel of his lips on hers. At lunch, her co-worker Yuki cornered her in the break room. Okay, spill, Yuki demanded, setting down her bulgogi. You've been glowing all morning. Either you won the lottery or you got laid. Which is it? Chioma nearly choked on her bibimbap. What? Neither. I'm not glowing. You absolutely are. And you keep smiling at your phone. Who is he? There's no he. I'm just in a good mood. Yuki narrowed her eyes suspiciously. This is about Friday night, isn't it? After Mr. Kang picked you up from the club. Chioma's heart stopped. How did you? Girl, half the office saw his car outside Saturday morning when they came in for overtime. Everyone's been gossiping about why our CEO personally picked up his assistant from a club. It wasn't like that. I was in trouble and Chioma stopped, realizing she couldn't explain without revealing too much. He what? Rode in like a knight in expensive armor. Very unlike him. Mr. Kang doesn't do personal favors. He was just being a responsible employer. And that's why you can't stop smiling. Because your responsible employer cares about your well-being. Can we please change the subject? Fine. But Chioma. Yuki's voice softened. Whatever's going on, be careful. Office relationships are complicated enough without adding in someone like Kang Min-Jun. If only Yuki knew the half of it. That evening, Chioma found herself back in Min-Jun's penthouse, wearing a simple black dress and telling herself this was just dinner. Just two people sharing a meal. Nothing to be nervous about. Min-Jun answered the door in dark jeans and a grey sweater, looking unfairly attractive in casual clothes. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy. "Hi yourself." He stepped aside to let her in, and she caught the scent of cooking, garlic, sesame oil, something delicious. "I made bulgogi. I hope that's okay. You didn't have to go to so much trouble." "It's not trouble. I wanted to." He took her coat, his hand lingering on her shoulder. "Besides, I need to prove I'm not sustained solely on the tears of my enemies." She laughed, some of her nervousness dissolving. This was still Min-Jun, her boss, yes, but also the man who made terrible jokes and cooked elaborate dinners and looked at her like she was something precious. They ate on his balcony, Seoul spreading out below them in a sea of lights. The food was delicious, the wine was excellent, and the conversation flowed easily. About work, about Korea versus Nigeria, about books and music and the little details of life they'd never had time to discuss in the office. "Can I ask you something?" Chioma said as they finished eating. "Anything." "The fighting. Where did you learn to fight like that?" Min-Jun's expression shuttered slightly. "My father insisted I learn. Said a man in his position needed to be able to protect himself and his interests. I trained in multiple martial arts from childhood. It wasn't optional." "That sounds lonely." "It was." He refilled her wine glass. "My childhood wasn't exactly traditional. Private tutors, bodyguards, expectations. My father grooming me to take over, to be strong, to never show weakness." "Is that why you're so controlled? The Ice King persona?" "The what?" Chioma winced. "That's what people call you at the office. The Ice King. Because you're so cold and intimidating." To her surprise, he smiled. "I know. I encourage it, actually. It's easier to do business when people are afraid of you." "But you're not actually cold." "No." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Tell me what I am, then." Chioma considered, looking at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. "You're careful. Guarded. You've built walls so high that people can't see past them to who you really are. But you're not cold. You're..." She searched for the right word. "You're burning, actually. You just keep the fire locked inside." Min-Jun stared at her, his expression intense. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "See me. Really see me. Not the CEO or the scary boss or the Ice King. Just me." "Maybe because I'm not afraid of you." "You should be. I'm not a good man, Chioma. The things I've done for business, for my family." "Stop." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not naive. I know you're not perfect. I know there are parts of your life that are dark and complicated. But that doesn't change what I see when I look at you." "And what do you see?" "A man who works too hard. Who carries too much responsibility. Who saved me from attackers and learned to cook so he could take care of himself. Who listens to drunk voice notes 3 times and calls it charming instead of firing me." It was charming. It was embarrassing. It was honest. He stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "You're always honest with me. Even when you probably shouldn't be. Someone has to tell you when you're being unreasonable." See? Most people are too scared. But not you. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. You're either very brave or very foolish. Can't I be both? He laughed, the sound warm and genuine, and then he was kissing her again. Slower this time, deeper, like they had all the time in the world. Chioma's hand slid into his hair, and she felt him smile against her lips. Stay, he murmured when they broke apart. Not like last time. Not because you're drunk. Just, stay. It was a terrible idea. Reckless. They'd agreed to take things slow. Okay, she whispered. This time, when they went to his bedroom, she was fully conscious. Fully aware of every choice, every touch, every moment. And when Min-Jun laid her down on his silk sheets, his eyes dark with want but also with something softer, something that looked a lot like care, Chioma knew she was in trouble. The best kind of trouble. Tuesday morning. Chioma woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. She was alone in Min-Jun's bed, wrapped in his sheets, wearing one of his t-shirts. She could hear him moving around in the kitchen. Her phone showed 7 missed calls from Yuki and a string of messages. Where are you? You didn't come home. Chioma or Konkwo. If you don't answer me, I'm calling the police. Wait, are you with him? Girl, you better call me. Chioma winced. She'd forgotten to text Yuki that she wouldn't be home. She quickly typed, I'm fine. I'll explain later. Promise I'm safe. The response was immediate. You better have details. Min-Jun appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 coffee cups, looking unfairly perfect in just sweatpants. Good morning. Morning, she managed, very aware that she was in his bed, in his shirt, and that he was looking at her like she was breakfast. We have about 45 minutes before we need to leave for the office, he said, setting the coffee on the nightstand and sitting on the edge of the bed. I took the liberty of having clothes delivered for you. Professional, appropriate, your size. You had clothes delivered. At 6 a.m. I have people. He smiled at her expression. Perks of being the CEO. This is surreal. My boss is bringing me coffee in bed after, she stopped, blushing. After we spent the night together, he finished, leaning down to kiss her forehead. Yes. Though technically I'm not your boss right now. Right now I'm just a man who's very happy you're here. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Min-Jun. I know. We need to talk about how this works. Rules, boundaries, what happens at the office. He took her hand. But I need you to know something first. Last night wasn't casual for me. This isn't just physical. He seemed to struggle with the words. I'm invested in you, Chioma. In whatever this is between us. I'm invested too, she admitted. Which terrifies me. Good. We can be terrified together. He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in his scent, coffee and cedar and something uniquely him. Now drink your coffee. We have work. The car ride to the office was surreal. Min-Jun sat beside her, close enough that their knees touched, his hand finding hers whenever the driver wasn't looking in the rearview mirror. They talked through logistics, how to act at work, when they could safely see each other outside the office, what to do if people started getting suspicious. The important thing, Min-Jun said, is that no one can accuse you of sleeping your way to any position. Your work speaks for itself, but people will talk anyway. So we pretend nothing's changed at the office. Exactly. I remain your demanding, unreasonable boss. You remain my efficient, slightly terrified assistant. I'm not terrified of you. His eyes heated. I know. It's one of my favorite things about you. They arrived at Kang Industries, and the professional masks slid back into place. Min-Jun exited first, not looking back. Chioma followed 5 minutes later, using a different entrance as they'd planned. Everything should have gone smoothly. It didn't. She was barely at her desk when Mr. Park from HR appeared, his expression grave. Miss Konkwo, could you come with me please? Her heart sank. Is something wrong? Just a routine matter. This way. But it wasn't routine. She could tell by the way other employees watched her walk past, by the whispers that followed her. Something was very, very wrong. Mr. Park led her to a conference room where 2 other HR representatives waited. The lead investigator, a severe woman named Miss Kim, gestured for Chioma to sit. Miss Okonkwo, we've received a complaint about your relationship with CEO Kang. The bottom dropped out of Chioma's stomach. What kind of complaint? An anonymous report claiming you're engaged in an inappropriate sexual relationship with Mr. Kang and that you're receiving preferential treatment as a result. That's... Chioma stopped. She couldn't deny it. Not entirely. But she also couldn't confirm it without risking both their jobs. Who made this complaint? As I said, it's anonymous. But we take all workplace conduct violations seriously. We need to ask you some questions. The next hour was brutal. Question after question about her relationship with Min-Jun, about her work performance, about whether she'd ever felt pressured or coerced. Chioma answered carefully, honestly where she could, vague where she had to be. Yes, Mr. Kang had picked her up from a club. No, nothing inappropriate had happened. She'd been in danger and he'd ensured her safety as a responsible employer would. Yes, she'd spent time with Mr. Kang outside of work. No, their relationship was strictly professional. The lies tasted bitter, but what choice did she have? The truth would only hurt them both. When they finally let her go, Chioma felt wrung out, exhausted. She returned to her desk to find Min-Jun standing there, his expression thunderous. My office, he said curtly. Now. She followed him in, and the moment the door closed, his mask dropped. Are you okay? What did they ask you? Someone reported us. Anonymous complaint about an inappropriate relationship. Min-Jun's jaw clenched. The Lee family. It has to be. They must have had someone watching, gathering evidence. What do? We deny everything. Maintain that we're professional colleagues. They have no proof of anything else. He ran a hand through his hair. Chioma, I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. I've put you in an impossible position. This isn't your fault. It absolutely is. I'm the one who couldn't keep my feelings professional. I'm the one who, he stopped, turning away. Maybe we should stop this. Before it gets worse. Before they have real ammunition to use against you. The words hit like a physical blow. You want to end this. Already. I want to protect you. Don't you see? Being with me makes you a target. The Lee family, the HR investigation, my father's associates, everyone will try to use you against me. And I can't. His voice broke. I can't let them hurt you. Chioma stood, moving to stand in front of him, forcing him to look at her. Min-Jun, listen to me. I knew this would be complicated. I knew there would be risks. But I also knew, I know, that what we have is worth fighting for. You don't understand the danger. Then help me understand. Stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. Let me make my own choices. He stared at her, conflict warring in his expression. What if I can't keep you safe? What if you don't have to? What if we protect each other? For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then slowly, carefully, he pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious and fragile. You're going to be the death of me, he murmured into her hair. At least you'll die happy. Despite everything, he laughed. They stood there in his office, holding each other, knowing that outside that door waited complications and dangers and a dozen reasons why this couldn't work. But inside that moment, with his arms around her and her heart pressed against his, Chioma knew one thing for certain. She was already in too deep to walk away now. Even if the wrong number had been exactly the right mistake. The man who stood in the doorway radiated power in a way that made Min-Jun's commanding presence look tame by comparison. Kang Dae-jung was shorter than his son but somehow took up more space, his tailored suit immaculate, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. Everything about him screamed old money and older secrets. But it was his eyes that made Chioma's blood run cold. They were the same shape as Min-Jun's, the same dark color, but where Min-Jun's held warmth beneath the ice, his father's held nothing but calculation. You must be Miss Okonkwo, Dae-jung said, switching to perfect English, his accent barely noticeable. My son's assistant. The pause before assistant was deliberate, loaded with implication. Mr. Kang, Chioma managed, bowing slightly, her mind racing. How much did he know? How long had he been having them watched? Father, Min-Jun said again, his voice tight with controlled anger. You can't just walk into my office unannounced. Can't I? I built this company, boy. Every brick, every contract, every deal that made this empire possible. Dae-jung moved into the room with predatory grace, and Chioma noticed two men in dark suits stationed outside the door. Bodyguards. Or enforcers. I think that earns me the right to visit my son whenever I please. You retired. You gave me control. I gave you the appearance of control. There's a difference. Dae-jung's eyes slid to Chioma, assessing, and she felt like an insect under a microscope. Miss Okonkwo, would you excuse us? This is a family matter. She stays, Min-Jun said immediately, moving slightly to position himself between them. Dae-jung's eyebrows rose. Protective of the help now. How interesting. Tell me, son, is this the reason Lee Jinwoo called me this morning? To inform me that my heir is jeopardizing business relationships over pretty face. The casual cruelty in his tone made Chioma flinch, but Min-Jun's expression went absolutely arctic. Lee Jinwoo can go to hell. And if you think I'm going to let him, or you, dictate my personal life. Personal life. Dae-jung laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. You don't have a personal life. You're a Kang. Everything you do reflects on this family, on our interests, on the carefully balanced relationships that keep this empire running. The empire you're so concerned about is legitimate business now. I've spent 5 years separating us from what made us powerful. From the foundations I laid. Dae-jung's voice hardened. You think you can just walk away from our obligations? Our alliances? The Lee family has been our partner for 3 generations. And now you're antagonizing them over what? An assistant you're fucking. Father, Min-Jun's voice was deadly quiet now, and Chioma could see his hands clenching into fists. Don't. Dae-jung held up a hand. I didn't come here to argue about your choice in women, though I will say you're showing spectacularly poor judgment. I came to inform you that Lee Jinwoo is demanding compensation for the damage you've done to his men. The 3 you hospitalized outside that club. Chioma's stomach dropped. She'd forgotten about those men in everything that had happened since. They assaulted my employee, Min-Jun said flatly. They're lucky I only sent them to the hospital. They were sending a message. You overreacted. And now there are consequences. Dae-jung pulled an envelope from his jacket, tossing it onto Min-Jun's desk. Lee is demanding 10 billion won in compensation. Or what? Or he goes public with certain information about our family's past business dealings. The kind of information that would very much interest the prosecutors who've been sniffing around our tax records. The silence that followed was suffocating. Chioma watched the muscle in Min-Jun's jaw tick, the telltale sign he was furious but trying to control it. This is extortion, Min-Jun said finally. This is business, Dae-jung corrected. Business you would understand if you hadn't been so busy playing corporate reformer. The old ways exist for a reason, son. They keep everyone in line. They maintain order. They maintain corruption. Violence. Everything I've been trying to move us away from. And look where that's gotten you. Weakened. Vulnerable. Making decisions with your dick instead of your brain. Dae-jung's eyes cut to Chioma again. No offense, Miss Okonkwo, but you're a liability. To him, to this company, to our family. That's enough. Min-Jun's voice could have frozen fire. You don't speak to her that way. You don't speak about her at all. Or what? You'll fight me too. Add your own father to the list of people you're willing to destroy for a woman you've known less than a year. If necessary. The words hung in the air, and Chioma saw something flicker across Dae-jung's face. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. I see, he said slowly. You actually care about her. This isn't just an affair. You have feelings. Min-Jun didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. Dae-jung laughed again, but this time it sounded almost pitying. "Oh, son. That makes this so much worse. Don't you understand? The moment Lee realizes she actually matters to you, she becomes the perfect pressure point. He'll use her to control you, manipulate you, destroy everything you've built." "Not if I destroy him first," Min-Jun said quietly. "With what? Your legitimate business empire. Your reformed corporate practices." Dae-jung shook his head. "You gave up the tools you need to fight this war. You can't beat the Lee family with spreadsheets and board meetings." "Then I'll find another way." "There is no other way." For the first time, Dae-jung's composure cracked, his voice rising. "This is the world we live in. This is the life you were born into. You can't just wish it away because you fell in love with some girl. Don't." Min-Jun's voice was lethal. "Don't reduce what she is to me. And don't pretend you care about my happiness or my choices. You just want me to fall in line, to go back to being your obedient heir. I want you to survive, to protect what we've built. But you're so busy playing the noble hero that you can't see you're about to lose everything." Father and son stared at each other, the tension so thick Chioma could barely breathe. She'd been silent through all of this, feeling like an intruder in a family drama that went back decades. But she couldn't stay silent anymore. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I'm standing right here. If you're going to discuss me like I'm a chess piece, I'd appreciate being included in the conversation." Both men turned to look at her, Dae-jung with surprise, Min-Jun with something like pride. "Miss Okonkwo," Dae-jung started. "No, let me speak." Chioma stood straighter, channeling every ounce of courage her police officer father had taught her. "You're right that I'm a complication. You're right that being involved with Min-Jun, with your son, makes my life more dangerous. But what you're wrong about is assuming I don't know that. Assuming I can't handle it. With all due respect, you have no idea what you're dealing with." "I grew up in Lagos during some of its worst years," Chioma interrupted. "My father was a cop who refused to take bribes from gangs, which meant our family was targeted constantly. I learned to check under our car for bombs before I learned to drive. I know what it's like to live with danger, Mr. Kang. So please don't condescend to me about risks I'm taking with my eyes wide open." Dae-jung studied her with new interest. Brave words. But bravery doesn't stop bullets or prevent kidnappings. "No, but it means I'm not going to run at the first sign of trouble. And it means I'm not going to let you or the Lee family or anyone else make my decisions for me." She glanced at Min-Jun, including him. "I'm here because I choose to be. And I'll leave if and when I choose to. Not because powerful men decided I'm inconvenient." A smile tugged at Dae-jung's lips, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. "I see why you like her, Min-Jun. She has spine." He turned back to his son. "But spine doesn't change the situation. Lee wants his money or his revenge. You have 48 hours to decide." "I'm not paying him a single one." "Then you're declaring war. On the Lee family, on our old alliances, on the entire network that's kept this family powerful for 3 generations. Dae-jung moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. "Think carefully, son. Some wars can't be won. And some things, once destroyed, can never be rebuilt." He left, his bodyguards falling into step behind him, and the office felt cavernous in his absence. Min-Jun stood frozen, his back to Chioma, his shoulders rigid with tension. She wanted to go to him, to touch him, to offer comfort. But she wasn't sure if he'd accept it right now. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice rough. "You shouldn't have had to hear that. Shouldn't have been subjected to." "Min-Jun, stop." Chioma moved to him, placing a hand on his arm. "I meant what I said. I'm here by choice. Your father doesn't scare me." He turned to face her, and the anguish in his expression nearly broke her heart. "He should. Because he's right about one thing. Being with me puts you in danger. Real danger. The kind that doesn't care how brave you are." "So what are you saying? We should end this. Let them win." I'm saying I don't know how to keep you safe and still have you in my life. And the thought of something happening to you because of me, his voice cracked. I couldn't survive that, Chioma. She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. Then don't keep me safe. Fight with me. Let me be your partner in this, not something you have to protect. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. Stop trying to shield me from the truth and trust me with it. All of it. Min-Jun searched her eyes, and she could see him warring with himself, decades of training to handle problems alone conflicting with the desire to let someone in. Finally, he pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Okay, he whispered. Okay. But not here. Tonight. I'll tell you everything. About my family, about the Lee family, about the war my father thinks is coming. And then you can decide if you still want to be part of this mess. I already know my answer. You say that now. I'll say it tonight too. And tomorrow. And however long it takes for you to believe me. She kissed him softly. I'm not going anywhere, Min-Jun. You're stuck with me. He made a sound between a laugh and a sob, pulling her tighter against him. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the middle of his office, knowing that outside these walls, storms were gathering. That evening, Min-Jun's penthouse. Chioma had gone home first to change and to face Yuki's interrogation. Her roommate had been waiting with wine and a determined expression. Okay, I've been patient all day, Yuki had announced. But now you're going to tell me everything. And I mean everything. Starting with why you didn't come home last night and ending with why you look like you're about to face a firing squad. So Chioma had told her. Not everything. She couldn't reveal Min-Jun's family connections or the danger from the Lee family, but enough. That she'd been seeing their boss. That it was complicated. That his family didn't approve. Yuki had listened with widening eyes, her wine forgotten. Holy shit, she'd breathed when Chioma finished. You're dating Kang Min-Jun. Our Ice King CEO. The man who made Park from accounting cry over a misplaced decimal point. He's different when we're alone. I'm sure he is. But Chioma, this is insane. He's your boss. There are power dynamics, company policies. I know all that. But Yuki. Chioma had struggled to find the words. When I'm with him, I feel seen. Really seen. Not just as his assistant, or as a woman trying to make it in a foreign country. He sees me. All of me. And I see him too, the man behind the CEO mask. And that man is worth the complications. Yuki had studied her for a long moment, then sighed. You're in love with him. Chioma had started to deny it, then stopped. Was she? They'd only been, whatever they were, for a few days. Love was supposed to take longer, wasn't it? But when she thought about Min-Jun, about his rare smiles, his terrible jokes, the way he looked at her like she was something precious, her chest ached with feeling. Maybe I am, she'd admitted quietly. Then be careful, Yuki had said, reaching across to squeeze her hand. Not just with your job. With your heart. Because powerful men like that, they can break you without even meaning to. Now, standing outside Min-Jun's penthouse door, Chioma wondered if Yuki was right to worry. Min-Jun answered on the first knock, dressed casually in jeans and a black Henley, his feet bare, his hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. Hi, he said softly. Hi yourself. He pulled her inside, kissing her with an urgency that spoke of the stress of the day, the fear of losing her, the desperate need for connection. Chioma kissed him back just as fiercely, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-Jun rested his forehead against hers. I ordered food, he said. Tai. I hope that's okay. I didn't trust myself to cook tonight without burning something. Tai is perfect. They ate on his couch, the city lights twinkling below them, the food barely touched because neither had much appetite. Finally, Min-Jun set down his plate and turned to face her fully. I need to tell you about my family, he started. The real story, not the sanitized version the media knows. Chioma set down her own plate, giving him her full attention. My grandfather started the Kang family business in the 1960s, Min-Jun began. Post-war Korea was chaos, poverty, corruption, entire systems breaking down. He saw opportunity in that chaos. Started with gambling houses, protection rackets, loan sharking. Built an empire on the backs of desperate people. He spoke clinically, like he was reciting a history lesson, but Chioma could hear the shame beneath the words. My father expanded it, he continued. Made it more sophisticated. Legitimate businesses as fronts, politicians on the payroll, ties to other criminal organizations across Asia. By the time I was born, we were one of the most powerful crime families in Seoul. But to the outside world, we were just another wealthy corporate dynasty. And you grew up in that world, Chioma said quietly. I grew up being trained for it. My father didn't just want an heir, he wanted a weapon. Someone who could navigate both worlds. The boardroom and the back alley. So I learned business. I learned fighting. I learned how to threaten someone with a smile and how to destroy a competitor without leaving evidence. He stood, moving to the window, his back to her. When I was 23, my father had me prove myself. There was a rival family trying to move into our territory. He wanted me to handle it. To show I was ready to be his successor. What did you do? Chioma's voice was barely a whisper. I did what I was trained to do. I destroyed them. Systematically. Financially, socially, physically. By the time I was done, their organization was in ruins and their leader was. He stopped, his shoulders tense. He survived. Barely. But I put him in the hospital for 3 months. The silence that followed was heavy. Chioma processed what he was telling her, trying to reconcile the man she knew with the person he was describing. And then, she prompted gently, and then I looked at what I'd become. What my father had made me. And I hated it. Hated him. Hated myself. He turned back to face her, his expression raw. So I made a choice. I told my father I would take over the legitimate business, expand it, make it successful enough that we wouldn't need the illegal operations anymore. But I wouldn't be his enforcer. Wouldn't run his criminal empire. How did he react? He laughed. Said I was naive. That I'd come back to the old ways eventually. Min-Jun's jaw clenched. That was 5 years ago. I've spent every day since trying to prove him wrong. Separating the clean business from the dirty money. Cutting ties with families like the Lees who still operate in the shadows. Building something I don't have to be ashamed of. He moved back to the couch, sitting close enough that their knees touched. But you can't just walk away from that world, he said quietly. My father was right about that much. The old alliances, the old debts, the old enemies, they don't just disappear because I want them to. And people like the Lee family, they see my reforms as weakness. As opportunity. That's why they targeted me, Chioma realized. To prove you're still vulnerable. Yes. And if they succeed, if they can use you to control me or force me back into the old ways, then everything I've built collapses. I become my father's son again. The weapon he always wanted. Chioma took his hand, lacing their fingers together. So don't let them. We fight back. Together. Chioma, you don't understand what you're offering. Fighting the Lee family means. I don't care what it means. She shifted closer, cupping his face with her free hand. Min-Jun, I'm not some delicate flower who needs protection. I'm a woman who survived plenty of dangerous situations. And I'm telling you right now, I'm with you. Whatever comes. They could hurt you. Kill you. They could. But they could also get hit by a bus tomorrow or struck by lightning. Life is risk, Min-Jun. And you're a risk I'm willing to take. He stared at her, emotions warring across his face. Fear, hope, love, desperation. How are you so brave? I'm not brave. I'm terrified. But I'm also stubborn as hell, and I refuse to let bad people make my choices for me. She smiled slightly. My father used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. And being with me is the right thing. Being with you is the thing that makes me happy. So yes, it's right. Min-Jun pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I don't deserve you, he murmured into her hair. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. They stayed like that for a long time, drawing strength from each other, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for tonight, they had this, each other, the truth finally spoken, and the choice to face whatever came together. 48 hours later, Friday evening. The deadline Lee Jinwoo had given them had passed. Min-Jun had refused to pay, refused to negotiate, refused to show any weakness. Now they waited to see what form the retaliation would take. It came during the company dinner, a quarterly event where Kang Industries executives gathered to celebrate successes and build morale. Min-Jun had wanted to cancel, but Chioma had argued against it. If you cancel, it looks like you're afraid, she'd said. It looks like they're already controlling your choices. We go. We show strength. So they'd gone, keeping their professional distance in public, but Chioma had felt the weight of his gaze all evening, the unspoken communication between them. She was networking with some junior managers, discussing the upcoming product launch, when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your mother is lovely. Such a shame if something happened to her. The world tilted sideways. Chioma's hands shook as she opened the attached photo, her mother, in Lagos, walking out of her church. The photo was dated today. Hours ago. They had eyes on her mother. Halfway across the world, her mother was being watched by dangerous people because of Chioma's choices. She looked up, searching the crowd for Min-Jun, her heart hammering with panic. Their eyes met across the room, and he immediately knew something was wrong. He excused himself from the conversation he was in and crossed to her, his expression concerned. What's wrong? He asked quietly. She showed him the phone. The change that came over him was terrifying. His expression went absolutely cold, his body rigid with barely controlled fury. When did you get this? Just now. Min-Jun, my mother. Will be protected. I promise you. He pulled out his own phone, typing rapidly. I'm sending security to Lagos right now. They'll be watching her within the hour. You can send security to Nigeria. Just like that. I have contacts everywhere. Your mother will be safe, Chioma. I swear it. But even as he said it, she could see the calculation in his eyes. This was exactly what his father had warned about. The Lee family using her family, to control him. This is what they want, she said quietly. To prove I'm your weakness. You're not a weakness. Yes, I am. We both know it. And now they're threatening my mother to prove it. She took a shaky breath, trying to think past the panic. What do? We end this. Min-Jun's voice was steel. Lee Jinwoo wants to play games with people I care about. Fine. But he's forgotten who I am. Who I was trained to be. The dangerous edge in his tone made Chioma's blood run cold. Min-Jun, what are you planning? What I should have done from the beginning. Reminding the Lee family why my father trained me. Why they should have left well enough alone. You're talking about violence. I'm talking about war. They started this. I'm going to finish it. Before Chioma could respond, Min-Jun's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened further. It's Lee Jinwoo. He answered, putting it on speaker so Chioma could hear. Mr. Kang, Lee's voice was smooth, satisfied. I trust you received my message. Through your lovely assistant's phone. You made a mistake, Lee. Min-Jun's voice was deadly calm. You threatened someone under my protection. Did I? I merely sent a photograph. No threat was made. Though I understand Lagos can be such a dangerous city. Anything could happen to a woman walking alone. If you touch her mother, if you touch anyone connected to either of us, I will rain down such destruction on your family that your ancestors will feel it. Lee laughed. Such dramatic threats. But what are you going to do, really? You've spent 5 years playing the legitimate businessman. You've given up the tools you'd need to actually hurt me. Have I? Something in Min-Jun's tone made even Chioma shiver. You've made another mistake, Lee. You assumed that because I chose to walk away from that life, I forgot how to live it. But I didn't forget. I just chose not to use what I know. Until now. The silence on the other end was telling. You have 24 hours, Min-Jun continued. Pull your people from Lagos. Send me written confirmation that Chioma or Konkwo and her family are off limits. Completely. Forever. And maybe, I won't destroy everything you've built. Or what? Lee's voice had lost some of its smugness. You'll beat up more of my men. You can't touch me, Kang. I'm too well protected, too well connected. Your daughter attends Seoul National University, Min-Jun interrupted. Second year, studying international relations. She has a boyfriend you don't know about, a Japanese student named Tokishi. They meet every Thursday at the cafe near campus. She's there right now, actually. Has been for about 30 minutes. Another pause. Longer this time. You wouldn't dare. I wouldn't. But you see, I have contacts too. People who owe me favors. People who don't have the same moral compass I do. One phone call from me, and your daughter becomes as vulnerable as you tried to make Chioma's mother. So I'll ask you again, do you really want to play this game? Or do we end this now, before more people get hurt? Chioma could hear Lee Jinwoo breathing on the other end, could practically feel his rage and fear through the phone. This isn't over, Lee finally said. Yes, it is. Because if it's not, if I hear your name associated with any threat to anyone I care about, I won't make threats next time. I'll just act. And trust me when I say I know exactly how to hurt you in ways you'll never recover from. Ways I learned from my father, who learned from his father. We built an empire on knowing people's vulnerabilities, Lee. Don't make me remember how good I am at exploiting them. Min-Jun hung up without waiting for a response. The silence that followed was deafening. Chioma stared at the man she'd thought she knew, seeing shadows of the person he used to be, the weapon his father had trained. You would have actually hurt his daughter, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. No. Min-Jun met her eyes. But he doesn't know that. The threat was enough. That's the game, Chioma. Information, leverage, fear. You don't have to pull the trigger if everyone believes you will. But you could have. If necessary. To protect me. Yes. He said it simply, honestly, without apology. I would do terrible things to keep you safe. That's what you need to understand about being with me. I'm trying to be better than I was. But I'm still my father's son. Still capable of, he stopped, jaw clenched. Chioma should have been horrified. Should have been afraid of this man who could casually threaten someone's daughter to make a point. Instead, she felt safer than she'd ever felt in her life. Is my mother really being protected right now? She asked. My people are already in Lagos. She'll have round-the-clock security. She'll never even know they're there. And Lee's daughter? Is she really at that cafe? Yes. I've had his family monitored since this started. Know your enemy, Chioma. That's the first rule of survival in this world. She nodded slowly, processing. What happens now? Now we wait. Lee will either back down or escalate. If he backs down, this ends. If he escalates. Min-Jun's expression hardened. Then I finish what I should have finished 5 years ago. By becoming what you hate. If that's what it takes to protect you, yes. Chioma stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palm. Min-Jun, I don't want you to sacrifice who you're trying to be for me. If protecting me means becoming your father's weapon again. It means you're alive. You're safe. That's all that matters. No, it's not. You matter. The man you're trying to become matters. He covered her hand with his eyes intense. The man I'm trying to become isn't worth anything if I lose you in the process. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed again. An email. From Lee Jinwoo. Min-Jun opened it, scanning quickly, then showed it to Chioma. All surveillance on the Okonkwo family has been withdrawn. Consider this matter closed. The Lee family has no further interest in your assistant or her relations. It was over. Just like that. One phone call, one threat, and the danger had passed. He backed down, Chioma breathed. He had no choice. I gave him away to save face while protecting his own family. That's the trick, always give your enemy an out that feels like their choice. Min-Jun pulled her close, and she felt the tension draining from his body. Your mother is safe. You're safe. That's all I care about. But as Chioma rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow back to normal, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. They'd won this battle, but the war Min-Jun's father had warned about was still coming. And when it did, she wondered which man would show up to fight it, the CEO trying to build something better, or the weapon his father had created. Maybe, she thought, it would be both. And maybe that's exactly what they'd need to survive.